Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Happy Friday. Some people are still joining, but in the meantime, I'd love for you to just tell us in the chat what part of town you're tuning in from. And I'm going to get started pretty quickly because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know some of y'all are probably on a lunch break here, so don't want to keep you too long. Okay, great. So my name is Casey Schwartz, and I am the owner attorney of Schwartz Legacy Planning. Today, we are going to talk about getting your legal affairs in order in the new year. The new year is a great time to, sort of realign with your priorities, what's important to you, all of those to-dos that you had on your list last year that you did not take care of. And, it's just a good time to start fresh and reprioritize. So a little bit about me. This is a picture of my family, and I went to law school at the University of Baltimore. I'm originally from Maryland, been here 9 years. And I originally thought I would be a prosecutor, but surprise, during my 3rd year of law school, I became pregnant with my first child. And I had to create my own estate plan. And so, that looked a little bit different for me than the other law students in my class because I was looking at it through the lens of a wife and a soon-to-be mom. And it just really clicked for me. And I really fell in love with counseling families around protecting what is most important to them. So my husband, Dave, works with me. We've been married 12 years. And fun fact, today is his birthday. So he's here with us. If you want to give him a little happy birthday shout out, you're welcome to do that. And then these are our 3 children, Darby, Delaney, and Caleb.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So before we get into the meat of this presentation, I just want you to take a minute to, sort of reconnect yourself with what brought you here today. What was it about this topic that piqued your interest? What is it that's, sort of circling around in the back of your mind that has you interested in estate planning? Are you, do you want to make sure that you have control over what happens to you and peace of mind, what happens to your family? Are you worried about your assets? Maybe making sure they stay out of the hands of the government, making sure they stay out of the hands of maybe some people in your life, making sure that they are all found. What is it about that? Are you concerned about taxes? Do you want to make sure that your choices are honored when the time comes? That, the sensitive issues around medical care, that you have a say in that, and that a judge isn't deciding those decisions for you. Oftentimes, when it comes to planning, it's very transactional. And, it's really focused on planning for death. And, nobody wants to think about planning for death. Why would anyone want to think about that? And so it's really, not an enjoyable process. Oftentimes it's a one-off transaction. You will get some form documents that are, find and replace documents, filling in your information. You may talk about avoiding probate. You probably don't even know that that's an option. You may talk about estate taxes. You probably won't even discuss that. Your assets may go to heirs unprotected. You may not even know that there are options to protect your heirs' inheritance. There's no ongoing legal guidance. You're not really developing a relationship with your attorney. And there's a potential loss of assets to the State Department of Unclaimed Property because transactional lawyers don't talk about what it's actually like for the people that you love to step into your financial shoes when the time comes. And then, will that plan work? The way that we approach estate planning is a plan for your life. You're making informed, empowered decisions based on the realities of what will actually happen when something happens to you. You have the potential of saving your family a lot of money by avoiding probate, avoiding court costs. We will talk about, making sure that your assets are inventoried and they're not lost upon incapacity and death. We will talk about protecting family money from outsiders. We build a relationship with clients so that as changes come up and questions come up in your life, you feel comfortable reaching out to us to make sure that your plan stays in alignment with your life and the law. And our goal is to keep your family out of court and conflict, because who wants to leave that kind of legacy? So question for you, when was the last time you reviewed your existing plan? Has it been more than 3 to 5 years? If it has, you probably need to revisit that. Or do you not have a plan? If you don't have a plan, the state has a plan for you. Those are called intestacy laws, and each state has a different set of laws, and they determine what happens to your assets when you die. So the state's plan for you are these court processes called conservatorship and guardianship during your life, and then probate upon your death. When you go to court, you're basically leaving your family to duke it out about who's going to be in charge, who's going to take that primary role. And that creates conflict in your family when you don't give guidance to the people around you about who can make decisions. It also slows down action because you're subject to the court's timeline. It increases costs because you're in that court system. You have to pay all the associated fees. You might have to get a lawyer to represent you. And, it can just get really messy. Probate is also public. And so this is the actual will of Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Most people, assume that the rich and famous have great lawyers and they give them really good advice. But oftentimes those people, they don't plan, shockingly enough. And so I really doubt that Jackie Kennedy Onassis would have wanted her business in a public court record, but that is what happened because she didn't plan to avoid probate. And so when you go through probate, it's a public record. Anyone can walk into the county probate court and say, I want to see the Smith file, see who your beneficiaries are, see what kind of assets you have. And it opens your future beneficiaries up to predators. There are actually scammers who take advantage of those public records. When you don't plan, you're leaving assets available to your beneficiaries outright and unprotected. So if you don't plan for your assets and you have minors or you have grandchildren who might inherit, they could get that inheritance outright at 18. And I don't know about you, but I have 3 children, and the idea of them receiving a big chunk of money at 18 is not a very comforting thought. Most people would not want that outcome. And even if you do have a will, your kids could be at risk. And this is because we don't talk about emergency situations. In your will, you name long-term guardians who would take care of your kids if you died. But if you haven't died and you're just in a car accident and incapacitated, but you aren't available to take care of your kids, there's really no provision for that. And so what can happen in that situation is that your kids could be taken into a foster care situation. And as a mom myself, that's a very terrifying thought. And so we do something here at Schwartz Legacy Planning called a Kids Protection Plan that actually gives guidance to your trusted people around you to make sure that your children never enter the care of strangers. And we have additional guidance tools that help you really have peace of mind to make sure that your wishes are honored when it comes to taking care of your children. Healthcare directives. Many of you might remember the Terri Schiavo case that happened in the early 2000s. Terri was in her late 20s. She had a heart attack. She lost oxygen to her brain. And after a period of time, her husband said, listen, Terri and I talked about this. she would not want to be artificially kept alive if she was not going to come back. But her parents disagreed with him. And so because Terry did not have a healthcare directive identifying who her healthcare agent was and what those healthcare wishes were, it went into the court system. And, there was conflict between the husband and the parents. And that situation actually lasted about a decade. And it went up and down the court system. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. I remember that even the governor of Florida at that time got involved. And no one wants to put their family in a situation where they're fighting to get control to make decisions. And so you can avoid all of that court and conflict by simply having an updated healthcare power of attorney in place. So again, what happens without planning? Essentially, what happens when you don't plan is that you're giving up control and you're giving it to a judge. You're allowing a judge to make a decision about who in your life can make decisions for you. That individual that the judge chooses may not be the same individual that you would want making those decisions. A lot of times, my trust and estates professor always said money and death changes people. And sometimes these situations bring out the wrong kind of people to sort of, want to come in and take control and get in charge of money. And, they may not have your best interest at heart. And I have seen situations where the wrong people have been appointed. Because a judge doesn't know the people in your life the way that you do. They look at who looks good on paper, and you're on a docket of, dozens of cases, and a judge is just moving through and making decisions. And so, the ideal situation is that you're in control. You've decided who is going to make decisions for you, and you're not giving that control up to a judge. And especially when it comes to minor children, you don't want a judge to make a decision about who's going to raise them until they reach the age of majority. So some common planning techniques that fail. There's always, people out there who advise, sort of getting around planning by adding another owner to your property. So you have joint ownership. That has tax consequences oftentimes, and is not, often you can leave your family in a bad situation when it comes to capital gains taxes. Designating a beneficiary. Beneficiary designations don't have contingency plans. So if that person dies, then your assets are going to end up in your estate. Just signing a will. Oftentimes wills go missing. And again, you're still going through that probate process. And then, when you have a trust, just relying on a trust schedule will not actually make sure that your trust is funded. So the only way to avoid court, and yes, it is possible, is by creating a living trust, a revocable living trust. Trusts work as a will substitute. They create a private transfer of assets that operate outside of the probate court. So you're essentially putting your assets into a trust, which is like an invisible box that holds all of your things. And if you become incapacitated or when you die, someone else that you've identified as a trustee steps in, manages your assets, distributes them the way you've said in the privacy of an office. There's no freeze on your assets because they're in the court process. The court does not have continuing jurisdiction over trust for your kids. It's private. And these are all the ways that you have to fully fund your trust. So, what about protecting your heirs from, protecting your heirs' inheritance? There are ways that you can make sure that your children don't lose their inheritance to a new spouse or a lawsuit. And, those can be, those options are available. And estate taxes. A lot of people don't know that, there are estate taxes. There is not an estate tax in South Carolina, but there is a federal estate tax. Today, each person has an almost $13 million coupon, but the law that establishes that rate is going to expire at the end of 2025, and it's going to go back down to about $5 million. However, the thing that you need to know about estate tax is that it's a very political issue. And that estate tax exclusion number goes up and down, depending on, the government and how much money the government needs. And so this is something that you want to just keep your eye on, because any overage on that number is taxed at a 40% rate. And then assets getting lost to the State Department of Unclaimed Property. This is an area that is not discussed enough, because assets that are not tracked well can easily get lost. If someone else has to step into your financial shoes, what is that going to look like? Is it going to be easy for them to find your accounts and find your debts that you owe, or is it going to be a little bit of a learning curve? And in that period, that person is not going to be approaching that with a clear head. They're going to be in grief, and they're going to be, in a very vulnerable place. And you don't want to make it harder for the people that you love to find everything. You want to make it easy. And that's why we inventory assets. But assets that aren't tracked well, like I said, get lost very easily. That's how they end up in the South Carolina Department of Unclaimed Property. And that's why there's over $600 million sitting in that account, because someone forgot about an account and they died, or, people didn't know about it and it just sits there. And then what about passing on the intangible pieces of you, your favorite memories, your insights, your values, your experiences in life? What would it mean to you to have those from someone that you've lost? Most often, if you polled people, they would say, I'd rather have, a recording of my mom or dad's voice, or seeing them on video and seeing your parents interact, and those sort of intangible things that you can't put a price on. Those are what we really miss when we lose people in our lives. And we help you capture those, because we think that that's an important part of your plan as well. So, basically, one size fits all planning leaves your family at risk. Form focused, documents that are DIY or written by a lawyer who does not practice estate planning, who's, what I call a dabbler, does not leave your family with a result that you want. It won't keep your assets out of the court system or out of the Department of Unclaimed Property. It could leave your kids at risk of being in the care of strangers. And it only addresses, the here and now. It doesn't account for the future. So how do you get started with us? The way you get started with us is you schedule an appointment meeting that we call a family wealth planning session. In that session, we help you get more financially organized than you have probably ever been before. Most people are not that financially organized because, we're just trying to keep up with life, and we're not thinking about, what it would be like for someone else to step into our financial shoes. And then we'll sort of talk to you today based on what plan you have, or if you don't have a plan, we'll talk about the state's plan, and we'll let you know this is what would happen today if something happened to you. And then from there, you get to make an informed and empowered decision about what kind of outcome you want for the people that you love. We have 3 levels of planning for clients based on what outcomes you want, what your planning goals are, and what makes sense financially. And those fees typically range from about $2,000 to $8,000, depending on how much support you need and how much protection you need in your plan. We don't charge for phone calls and emails from our clients in the future, so that you always feel comfortable reaching out to us. You'll never be nickel and dimed from us. And we're here to make sure that you have everything that you need to keep your plan in alignment with your life and the law. So I know that procrastination is the biggest risk to your family. Planning is something that nobody wants to talk about for obvious reasons, right? Nobody wants to think about a time when they might be injured and may not be here. But you're here, and this is something that is clearly on your mind or has been on your mind. And so I want to help you take the next step, since you're here and you're pre-educated and you're getting the ball rolling. So if you schedule a family wealth planning session with us today, we will waive the fee of that session, which is up to $750 because it is 2 hours of time with us talking about you and everyone and everything that's important to you. And we will offer you a $250 discount on your plan of choice because you're here and you've been pre-educated and you've spent the time to, really understand planning. There is a link in the chat for you to do that if you're ready to get started. We do require that you do a little bit of homework in advance. That's part of getting organized. Once you get organized, you have that peace of mind that someone else stepping into your financial shoes is going to be able to find all of your things and the people that are important to you. And we do require a credit card hold. We take on a limited number of clients each month because we really want to give you the time, energy, and attention that you need to do this right. And so we just hold that to make sure that you're serious about meeting with us. And as long as you show up for the meeting and you do your homework, we don't charge you for the session. If you're not quite ready to schedule and you want to, talk to us more about our process, our number is 843-732-3811. And, we would love to assist you with getting this done. Does anyone have any questions? I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, can I advise family members across states? So I am licensed in Maryland and South Carolina, so I can only work with people who are live in those states. However, I do have a network of lawyers that practice similar to me. And so if you shoot us an email and ask about a specific city and state, we can help you find someone to pair up your family member with. And there was another question right here. Let's see. My mouse just disappeared. Here it is. What do we need for our first conversation? So if that is for the family wealth planning session, everything that you need, we'll ask you for in that homework. So you'll just complete the homework. And then once we get started, we'll kind of get going talking about you and everyone and everything that's important to you. Okay. I think that's everything. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here. Great. If you want to schedule a session, again, you can go ahead and schedule on that link. If you don't find a time there that works for you, give us a call and Dave can get you scheduled. We do have references and reviews. If you check out our, if you Google us, we have many reviews on Google. Okay. All right. Y'all have a great day. Happy Friday, and we look forward to meeting with you.